I'm Mimi Bartell with Four Premier Properties, and I'm here with Adam Carroll, who is also with Four Premier Properties. And we're very honored today to have with us Jeryl Hoover, the Mayor of Fredericksburg.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much. We are pleased to be able to meet this morning at the Kaffee Haus right across from Marketplace.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here. I've admired you all from afar for years, so thanks for having me.
Well, we're here to talk about a little bit about the development projects going on in Fredericksburg. If you can maybe tell us a little overview about what's going on in the city of Fredericksburg developments.
Well, I am hearing from staff that we are in an especially busy time, both with residential pursuit and you know about the explosion that we've had in multifamily housing over the last couple of years, I guess it is. I think if the last that I heard and from staff is that over the last couple of years, multifamily housing has doubled in terms of what's been approved. Maybe not what's on the ground now and available for rental, but it's certainly in the works. So that's a lot of growth. And so what we're looking at from the council perspective is, are these houses, are these apartments being filled, and by whom? Um, we know that our growth in population is pretty standard for the last couple of decades at 1% per year. So we were thinking, who's going to rent these apartments? And they're all market rate, mostly. Well, I say all. They're mostly market rate. And we don't have any tax incentive projects in the works right now. So we don't know where these people, I don't know, I should say, where these people are coming from and what pressure points those are relieving in housing.
Yeah.
There's also some housing developments being talked about and being pushed to development review at that level. There aren't a lot already approved that we're awaiting build out. But I would say that the state of development in Fredericksburg is it's healthy. People are continuing to look to build and to come. And we think that's good, although we know that no matter how many are built, it's very expensive. So we hope that we can at some point relieve that pressure of the people looking for housing here and what we have to offer, both on the ground and new. There are several new subdivisions being proposed in the Windcrest, Pica, and Holmig areas, along with additional units in Frieden and Friendship Oaks. I know you're familiar with all of that. And I'll send that slide to you all if you'd like to use, because that refers to those spots here. So development is doing well here, right?
Alive and well,
Yeah,
sounds like.
yeah. So we're very busy reviewing these requests and P&Z and so forth. So I would say that if that is a telltale sign of a healthy, growing, thriving community, that's who we are.
Are there any predictions in the increase of population over 5 years, 10 years? I know you said it's basically been 1% steady.
I've not seen anything that goes beyond that. Maybe 1.5, and that's just speculation based on what we think is happening with interstate migration from other states, because Texas is very popular these days, and the hill country is sure going to catch its share. But there's a lot of hill country, and we'll get a piece of it, I suppose. But all I've seen lately is maybe an expansion of 0.5%.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Could you explain to us what's the current status of development at the Y between 290 and 87?
I can tell you that what I know is that the developers are still very interested in putting a project on the ground, primarily a hotel and a conference center attachment. I think the latest of the footage for the conference center is 12,000 feet, which is what they've heard from the CVP, and EDC is an adequate new facility for those kinds of target market, which is the small corporate conferences. We don't have anywhere to do that right now, so DC Partners is the developer, and they have been approved for a PUD by a couple of councils ago, I think. So they're continuing to put a new ground plan, whatever it's called in your world.
Site plan.
Thank you, site plan. A site plan for a hotel facility with a conference center. And since I am terrible at retaining specific details, I can't remember how many rooms it is, but it's significant. And they were also looking to build out some retail. So that idea is still alive. And the last I've heard is that they have a new person in charge of interacting with the city. The person that was doing that has gone on to the things just recently. So I got an email that there's some new person. So I know it's active. I know that they've been through the development review process. I know they continue to mess with the ingress and egress and the traffic problems around there and so forth. But the big story is they're continuing, and I just suspect that within a couple of years there's going to be something fairly massive at that site.
It's exciting.
Is the city considering any more annexations or new annexations coming up?
Yeah, there are several property owners and developers that have approached the city regarding voluntary annexation requests. You probably know that the legislature has shut us down from involuntary annexation, and they're also moving to reduce our jurisdiction over ETJ. So, I'm not sure why the legislature's moving that way. I suspect that there's bad things going on in big cities, and the legislature, in its inability, seems to me, to say this works for big cities, but it doesn't necessarily work for rural areas like Fredericksburg. They just do one fell swoop, and we're stuck with the regulations from everybody. However, that doesn't answer your question. That was just my vent.
Yeah.
But there are several property owners and developers who have approached the city regarding voluntary annexation requests, and they're all in various stages of the process right now. So these tracts were included in the annexation discussion that we had this week in the last week's special called meeting. And I have a slide here that I'm going to refer to. As I recall, there were about 8 areas that were targeted in the city for current projects that are up for review. And I'd be happy to send that to you if you want to put that in placement.
That, yes.
I'll just show it to you real quick. So the green areas there are the areas that are hot. So I won't go over them now, but I'll tell you that it's almost encircling all the city limits. There's a project at least in the works.
With all of those projects, is there any concern about infrastructure, water, sewer, electricity?
There isn't on my part, and there is on people's part who just look at it from afar. That when people see big annexations or big projects coming in, there's always concern about water and traffic. And both are concerns within the city council's minds as well. If I were to characterize it, Mimi, I would say that traffic is the biggest part of those two. Because from what I hear of our water resources, and we stay on top of that pretty well with our new director of the Hill Country Underwater District.
It was good they got another Paul there. We didn't have to learn a new name.
Indeed. and I understand, Mimi, that he is every bit as wonderful as Paul in his ability to understand and assess our resources. There's no way to know for sure because it's all underground. But what we do know, what they can tell us, is that we have plenty of water. The issue is not running out of water. The issue is that in the summer months, 70% of our output goes to water lawns and landscape. 70% of the daily output. So when we're in stage whatever, it's to say, look, it's that time of year, y'all. We know you love to water your yards, but please know that all the 70% of what we're pumping is going to that. So we have to restrict that between April and August or whatever. But in terms of what you have to live and our ability to grow as a city, we've got plenty of water. The access is the issue. We need more well fields. We need more access for city use. Those are very expensive propositions. So when we talk about water issues, in my mind, we're not talking about access to what is available at some point at some time in some way. We're talking about what's available to us right now with our infrastructure. So that was a long, unasked for speech about water stuff. But yeah, there's concerns. I don't have any concerns about water. Apartment dwellers don't use much water. They don't water their gardens and that sort of thing. Houses use a certain amount, but if they stick with the restrictions, we'll be good, even with expansion and in number of lots on the ground. Traffic is what I think is driving people nuts. Right, Mimi? You've been here a long time.
Well, yes, and I am not a fan of what I guess it was TxDOT did with all of our side streets.
Me either. Me either. Now, part of it is that I'm old and I don't like change about these kinds of things. But that's another thing. Since you brought it up, let me just say, people think that the city council directs all of that. We don't. Our major roads in Fredericksburg are all owned, operated, and governed by TxDOT. So, and an entry street into the state highway is controlled by them. So that's why Washington became one way that way. They decided we want one less access point onto Main Street at that intersection. So they're the ones that designed that one way for one block. I'm sorry that it upsets people, I really am, and I wish we had more control. But all of those turn lanes and those things, they have a formula they believe works well for moving the traffic around the city. But yeah, it gets cumbersome and annoying. It does. That's just the truth. But traffic around town is something we are talking a lot about in the city, more than I ever since I've been mayor.
I understand. Can we regress for a minute and go back to water?
Sure.
I have heard a rumor that the city is going to be replacing some existing water lines with larger lines.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The approved fiscal year 26 budget includes plans to upgrade what are undersized and are aging, as you can imagine, water and wastewater lines throughout the city. And as you know, that's a long process.
Yes.
It takes a while. But we know that what's underground is increasingly inadequate. I don't know where exactly the areas are that are under review, but I know that the inside the city staff, there is a lot of talk and plans about that. And it's an expensive proposition too. So we either have to account for it in our general budget or look at a bond issue. It's no small task.
No, yeah, for sure. Adam, go ahead.
I was going to talk about the water issue. There's a few streets that when it does rain, it sort of floods. Does that have something to do with the smaller pipes, or is it?
Yes, it has to do with development. Development on the ground always changes the drainage plan. Unfortunately, again, I know I'm doing a lot of unfortunatelies in Fredericksburg, but unfortunately, those big roads that flood like that are state highways. And so we have to go through the process to get their review, their permission, and it costs a lot of money, so we get in the pipeline for grants, state money, and so forth. Nobody's in a hurry to help Fredericksburg on these state roads. So that's why things take so long to fix. They become a huge problem by the time we get around to it. That's one of the downsides of a small town.
Can I ask you about B&Bs?
Sure.
So since the new changes that went into effect a couple years ago, what is the attrition of the existing B&B permits? Do they get renewed? Do you see anything changing on that?
Short answer, Adam, is about 300 since we put in 300 less in the city limits since we put in the new regulation. Some of that's by attrition. Some of it's people, I'm not so much into this anymore. The market's not so hot anymore. It's too much to run. It was a sort of a vanity business, and I'm not into it anymore. Some have just missed the deadline and the grace period and failed to renew, and the council has been consistent. We have not been merciful. And these are in neighborhoods. These are in most of them that come for an appeal on an STR denial for renewal is R1. So I would say that the short answer is, since we put the new regulations in the fall of 23, about 300 less than we had then, for various reasons.
Interesting. Yeah. Would you share with us the plans for West Travis development?
I will, and I just got this from staff. So in response to a request from the county, which is that area out there by the Catholic Cemetery, the city recently annexed Catholic Cemetery Road, as I know you know. And the portion of West Travis with Catholic Cemetery and Metzger Road, we annexed that. The city currently has no plan for improvements to West Travis. However, a developer is discussing annexation of a tract of land just past the Catholic Cemetery for single-family housing. which include an extension of West Travis or a trail or a roadway. So we know that if that goes through, it's in the pipeline now. If it goes through, we're going to have to do something with West Travis.
That's a large parcel, isn't it?
It is. I think 42
40,
lots,
yeah, I think
something like
42
that.
acres out there, yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
Adam, do you have any other questions?
No.
Thank you so very much
you.
for
You're
spending time
welcome.
with us this
Well, I'm
morning.
honored you'd asked me to be part of your thing. I enjoyed visiting with you.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.